1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you for downloading Scuba Confidential. Welcome back.
We're back.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Woo!
He's whooping in the corner already.
Sorry.
The excitement's getting too much for Ian already, folks. Marcus here. I'm here with Ian, as you've just heard whooping, and Louise as well.
Hello.
So we're back again. We've got another show coming up, and we've got a guest on this particular show. We've got an interview with Samantha coming up, which we're going to talk about in a little while. But before we get to any of that and our usual features, you're going to notice something different on this particular episode, guys, in that the recording quality, hopefully, fingers crossed, is a little bit improved. And the reason for that is, thanks to the kind Patreons that we have, we've managed to invest in some nicer recording equipment. So hopefully the sound is nicer, hopefully it's a better experience for you guys.
It's all nice and shiny.
It is nice and shiny.
It's still our three voices, which we can't really do much about.
No,
but...
yeah, apologies for that.
And the Norfolk accents.
Yeah.
But hopefully the sound quality should be a lot better.
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. So for those people who've contributed, you helped us to make this step. If anyone else would like to join our little gang and contribute and generously help us to do more of these, you can go to patreon.com/scubaconfidential, make a contribution, just a little one. Every little bit helps us to make more of these.
Join the growing gang.
Join Ian's gang. Imagine that.
Probably best not to.
Do you want to be in my gang?
Tread carefully.
Go down that rabbit hole.
On now.
I think we're on the thinnest of thin ice here.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, as a patron, you get to have a say in the shows. You can potentially come on the show as a guest.
Possibly could be cake.
Potential cake involved.
Possibly.
So, not only are you helping us guys, but also, you get to be part of the Scuba Confidential podcast experience potentially as well.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
And those of you who listened to the last episode would have heard that Fern, one of our Patreons, came into the studio and recorded a bit with us. And on the next episode, we're hoping to get another kind of friend of the podcast in, a guy called Duncan, who some of you will get to meet on the next episode when that's released, to talk about equipment servicing, which is his speciality. So it's all good.
Yeah.
We're all moving forward. 2019.
Yeah, brilliant.
Rock and roll. Okay. As it's the off season, guys, and we're kind of coming up out of winter into the springtime. We haven't been diving, but we have been doing some podcast stuff. So we're going to skip what we've been up to. Essentially, I've been in the classroom doing some teaching.
Can I just
Ian,
say,
what have you been up to?
Well, I was just going to say that friends of mine have been diving,
right?
And last weekend, and that was just for everyone else who's listening. It's 2 degrees here at the moment in the water, so that's why we're not really diving so much in the UK.
Yeah.
Around here anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done for people who are listening in dry suits. You can do it, and you can have it's still diveable. It's not like it's dangerous.
It'll be clear. It
would be clear. The visibility would be good, but it would. Your extremities may start to get a little bit cold.
Yeah.
You would feel it, particularly on the top of your head and your hands and feet. I think when you're in the water for a few minutes.
I dived the local centre, and a couple of years ago, and honestly, that was like an axe to the head. It was so painful.
Yeah.
So not my thing. I'd rather wait for it to come up a bit.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that, Ian.
No. Exactly. I think what we'll do, we're going to move on now. It's our usual feature.
Yeah.
We've got Louise with the news.
First up on today's news, the London Diving Chamber has announced that it's going to close. So it's going to close on the 31st of March. Yeah, and that's after 15 years of operation at the Hospital of St John and St Elizabeth in St John's Wood in London, due to cuts in the system. Unfortunately, it's one of 2 dive chambers in the London area, and this particular one is going to get the chop. So it's quite a blow to not just divers, but anyone who's treated in a hyperbaric chamber.
So that'll leave just the one dive chamber open then?
In the London area,
right.
yeah. So the London dive chamber will close, and the existing one is in Whipps Cross, which is in North East London.
Yeah.
So that will be the go-to place for any hyperbaric therapy.
I met these guys at Eurotech, and they're really really nice to talk to. It's interesting to listen to about what they do and stuff like that. Such a shame that's come to a close.
It's a major shame, yeah.
And I think the worrying thing for me when I looked at it is it's an ongoing trend, and I'm not going to get on a political soapbox right now because it's not really the forum for it, but if you rewind back to about 2013, we had 10 or 11 chambers in the UK, and it's dropped down again. Now we're at 8, and if they keep going, if the funding keeps disappearing and these chambers are forced to close, then I don't know. I haven't seen the facts and figures behind it and the evidence, but there's people maybe put at risk. There's not the treatment available for people within a reasonable distance. It's not going to be good whether you're a diver or someone, as Lou said, who
is treated for burns and anemia, skin grafts, crush injuries, just to name a few. Yeah,
so it is sad news, and I don't really have the solution for it, but I just...
Our thoughts with all the people, who are going to lose their jobs, or hopefully, some of them can be relocated to other hospitals. But at the end of the day, it's a unit, a very specialist area of medicine that's run by dedicated people, and it's really bad.
They must have been really busy as well, though, because you think the size of London and the surrounding areas, and as you say, it weren't just for diving; it was used by other people.
Yeah.
So they must have been really busy, and can't believe that's shut.
I think it's going to leave quite a void, and hopefully the situation can kind of remedy itself, if you like. Really, not good news.
No. Have you got something more positive to balance that out for us, Lou?
Yes, I have. Yes,
we like to have balance on the show.
Positive person and all that. So, going down the research route, 2 Australian universities have developed an underwater robot that could help turn the tide in the struggle to save our reef system.
Oh, cool.
So, as we know, reef systems are under threat worldwide, but particularly in the Australian area, whether it's due to overfishing or too much boat traffic, pollution, various reasons. And these 2 guys have, or 2 universities rather, have developed a briefcase-sized submersible dubbed the larval bod.
I'm glad you said that.
The larval bod.
We're all glad Lou said that, and we didn't either.
That's why Lou does the news.
Deep in. And it's designed to basically move autonomously.
Right.
Brace yourself in, autonomously, along sections of reef that have essentially been damaged, and the robot will basically implant...
So walk along the floor?
Yeah, kind of,
cool.
or just scoot along. So it won't be damaging the reef, obviously it's just going to sort of scoot along. And it's basically going to sow seeds with microscopic baby corals. So it's going to basically go along the reef system and just drop these
I wish our listeners could see her
I'm quite animated,
animations going on.
Waving her hands around like a thunderbird.
I am the robot, and so basically it's going to plant these like seedings, if you like, really, of baby corals in an idea.
It's like something from a sci-fi movie. It's amazing that the technology is developed to that extent.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually up and running now, is it?
It's going to be, let's have a quick look. So, I believe it's going to be sort of taken with immediate effect. And one of the guys in charge, Peter Harrison, who's the director of the Marine Ecology Research Centre, said that they're also going to look at testing the larval bot in reefs in the Philippines as well. So not just in Australia, off the coast of Australia.
Larva bot.
The larval bot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with volcanoes.
I could see the look on Ian's face then. There's this confusion washed over him.
It happens.
As with any research, and I'm sure Samantha, if you're listening, you can appreciate any research is basically just kind of testing the water, if you excuse the term, and then actually seeing if.
So imagine that they could build like loads of these robots.
Hopefully.
And send them out or plant out loads of.
It's a little bit Black Mirror, but one thing I'd say is, and I read this article as well and thought it was really interesting. So I'm glad we talked about it today on the podcast. Is that it is just kind of a tiny chink in a bigger problem. These robots aren't going to solve the broader problem of climate change. In fact, there was a guy called Mark Eakin, I think his name is, who's with the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association. And he's quoted here in this article Lou's got as saying, it's like coming up with a robot to plant trees after a devastating wildfire that's just happened. It's not addressing how to stop the wildfires in the first place.
No.
His point being that, of course, there's still climate
It's a
change, there's
fix.
still a problem. It's kind of, it's like going in with the fire extinguisher and the fire's still going.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good and it's positive, and anything that helps is great.
Yeah.
But, it's not the ultimate solution, but it's
It's
certainly
something,
more cheery
isn't it?
than the.
It's an aid, isn't it? It's an aid to their research.
Yeah.
And I think it's using technology for a good purpose, and hopefully, time will tell what the research comes up with. But if it really takes effect and the baby corals do take hold, then it may be developed.
So what's
to be used across
encouraging
the
is
world.
that you've got people, intelligent people, with companies all looking at how we're going to fix it. They're not just saying, somebody else's problem or whatever.
No.
They're actually doing something about it.
For the greater good.
For the greater good. Yeah,
the greater
absolutely,
good.
Yeah, they're getting involved, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think it's positive. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, is that the news today?
Certainly is.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Louise.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. So we're going to move on now and do a little bit of a callback to something that we spoke about on the previous episode. Now, our regular listeners may recall on the previous episode we talked about a great white shark encounter that happened in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it happened at, I'm going to have a bash at the
Here we go.
pronunciation here, Oahu.
Uvavu.
Uvavu. Oahu in Hawaii, involving a diver called Ocean Ramsey and her fiance Juan Oliphant, who was the photographer.
Not made up names.
Well,
Elaborate, Ian.
I
Elaborate.
think elaborate, flamboyant, gregarious, one of those things.
Okay.
Yeah. What we found as we delved into this particular story was there was a little bit more to it, and the shark interaction. There was kind of two sides to it. Some people were blown away by the photography, and other people were a little bit upset at some of the contact with the shark and kind of the disruption of the shark's normal patterns in the water, and thought it was a bit controversial about the way it was approached. So, being the ingenious people that we are, we contacted Samantha Howlett, who's a marine research scientist for the last 12 years or so, and we wanted to get her opinion, just to see from someone who's been there, who's done it, who does have the letters after a name, exactly what her thoughts on it were. So with that in mind, we've now got an interview coming up that Louise and I managed to record with Samantha a few days ago, and we hope you enjoy it. Also in the interview, we're going to do a few fun little animal facts at the end to test your knowledge. So keep listening, and we'll see you at the other end. So welcome back to Scuba Confidential, Samantha. Nice to have you back on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me back.
No, it's a pleasure. Also with me is Louise.
Hello.
We thought we'd get you back on because on the last episode that we recorded, one of the news items we had involved this great white encounter in Hawaii. And I can't remember how you pronounced the place. You had a bash at it, Lou.
I'm not even going to try.
You're not
Mate. It's embarrassing.
Oahu or something like that. And it involved what appeared to be quite a heavily pregnant great white shark and a diver called Ocean Ramsey. And from what I saw, the reaction to it was kind of mixed, in that a lot of people were stunned by some of the photography, but then from the scientific and conservation community, there was more of a kind of a minor backlash in terms of her interaction with the shark. So what Louise and I would like to ask you is, from your experience with, obviously that's your background in marine science, is what your take on the whole encounter was, and what you think, if there are any lessons to be learned from it.
So the main thing for me, which I'm going to answer with a question, is, you are diving professionals, and when you take people out and you give them a briefing, what is it that you say to people when they're going in the water and how they're going to interact? How do you tell them to interact with the wildlife?
Well, for me, and Lou's probably the same, you can answer for yourself in a second, but my view is always look but don't touch. It's always, there should be no disturbance of the animal. You know, whatever that particular creature is. If it's a night dive and there's parrotfish curled up in a bit of coral, you don't shine your light at them and disturb them in their snooze. So for me, it's just on a grander scale with what we're talking about here.
You keep a bit of distance and respect them.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's one thing that we need to really get across is, especially for someone like Ocean Ramsey, who is trying to portray herself as a specialist, a researcher, someone who people are going to look at as a role model for these interactions, then you have to lead by example. And she 100% is not doing that in the video and the footage she put out there. And she should, you know, be held accountable for that, in my opinion. She claims it's beneficial for shark conservation. And in my opinion, I actually very strongly feel the opposite, because she's portraying the image that it's fine for people to swim with sharks, it's fine for people to touch sharks, it's fine for people to get in their like personal space, and it's not. And to put this image out there, they're giving the wrong message. I'm not saying that we shouldn't get in the water with sharks. I'm not saying that sharks are monsters, but we shouldn't portray that as the correct way to interact with these animals. Because more likely than not, people who don't have experience interacting with these big, large predators are going to make a mistake. They're going to get bitten, and there's going to be backlash. And I especially don't feel like the mentality, oh, well, you know, I've swum with sharks loads, I understand their behavior, I can do this, but you can't. That's also not a good role model, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, in that actually Louise and I at lunchtime were looking at the video footage of that encounter that was on the BBC news site, and the shark, they were that close to the shark, they were touching it on the snout, they were stroking it,
they were chasing it as well, they were getting above the shark, underneath her, really getting up in her space, which to me was a big no-no when I was watching it. And I was, because of the hype that surrounded it when it was first came out, it was easy to get on that bandwagon of, oh wow, isn't this great for raising awareness? Yeah. And then even as we released that previous podcast episode, we kind of had taken that angle. And then as we subsequently looked at more footage, it became apparent that there was two sides to this, and it wasn't necessarily the great encounter that we'd first witnessed. I'd not seen the actual video clip like you say on the BBC News website. I'd just seen the photo, and I'd not seen the actual footage, and I hadn't researched Ocean's work and that kind of thing, so a bit of further kind of investigation. I don't want it to come across as me like I don't making an issue or anything like this, but I just felt like it was important to say, I mean, on the surface it looks incredible, but there's a lot of connotation with this that we need to, like, you know, just raise. So I'm glad you guys are understanding with
Well, hopefully we're on the same page as you with it. I mean, you've got more understanding from a scientific point of view in your day-to-day interactions in Moorea. You're interacting with sharks of a different species, of course, but you're kind of interacting with I don't know what species of shark you have out there. I guess you have bulls and blacktips and things like this out there, but
you get a wide variety of sharks. The main ones that sort of around Moorea are like blacktip reef sharks and the sicklefin lemon sharks. But so you might have seen me debating on social media and online with a lot of people about this, and one person said to me, "You're not a shark expert, why should I listen to you?" And I mean, I feel like that's...
And after this chap got out of hospital, what did he...
No, I mean, it's a valid point, because someone says something, you know, why should we listen to you? Like, we're in the day, like, internet and social media is an incredible thing because it can connect us, but it can also mean that, you know, you must reference your sources and think who you're listening to and what they're trying to say. And my answer was, no, I'm not a shark specialist, but I have worked in conservation for 12 years. I've worked in a range of ecosystems, and there's a lot of things here that are applicable with conservation for other species. And so one of my old lecturers from university said, well, imagine if this Instagram model decided to walk up and stroke a lion and ride a lion. Like, it's exactly the same. Like, that wouldn't fly either.
Yeah.
And sharks are exactly the same in that sort of situation. They are an apex predator. They're important for the environment and ecology. But we should give them all due respect and observe them from afar.
It's a good comparison, actually. Yeah, like you say, if it was a lion or another apex predator, it would be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you've been to Kruger Park in Africa, haven't you? And
Madikwe.
Madikwe?
Yeah.
Well, you weren't going and petting the lions, I'm guessing.
Certainly not, no. Admire from afar, but yeah.
I mean, they do look pretty fluffy and strokeable, but I wouldn't personally do it myself.
No.
Well, that's good. So overall, the advice is, well, as we learn at day one, is kind of look but don't touch. And do you feel it's been damaging to sharks in terms of their perception, what she's done?
No, and so you make a good point with that. So she always tries to rationalise, and this isn't the first time that she's actually made footage like this. She always tries to rationalise it with there's an irrational fear of sharks from films like Jaws, and it's important for us, for the wider public, to understand that they're not killers and that they shouldn't be demonised. And that's true, but you don't have, the ends don't justify the means. There are plenty of ways to educate people about this without swimming up and harassing them and doing it in in an improper way, in my opinion. So I don't think it's been damaging, but I think people should be made aware that, you know, this isn't the correct way that we should interact with these species.
Yeah.
And one thing that reminded me before I came on, so in 2008, Save Our Seas Foundation did a really cool project where they were trying to do the same thing, change the view of sharks and get the message out there that, you know, this irrational fear is completely unfounded. So they did a campaign called Rethink the Shark. I don't know if you guys saw any of these videos.
No, it sounds familiar, but I can't recall any of it.
It was really clever. So they made these short videos of people like on the beach swimming, really happy, and then suddenly everyone's screaming and running out the water, and then the image was a toaster floating in the water. And it's true, statistically, you're more likely, there's 300 odd people die every year through faulty toasters, and then I think the average is 2 people die a year from shark attacks in Australia. So rationalising it in that sort of way is more effective, in my opinion. You can educate people that statistically our fears are completely unfounded in that sort of way.
I think there's probably a better way to do it, because like you, Samantha, Louise may be the same. I try and be scientifically minded, and whether I'm looking at this or anything else, is there evidence to support what we're looking at? So to me, those facts and figures, when you see those facts and figures about how tiny shark attacks are in comparison to how many sharks we massacre in the name of shark finning, or in comparison to toasters or being in a road accident, or whatever comparison you want to make.
So I've got a few fun little figures that I found. And it was like top 10 things that you're more likely to die from than like shark attacks.
It's a nice cheery thing for the podcast.
Yep. So, I mean, some of the obvious ones that came up first is like if you smoke or drink, you're more likely to kill yourself through your own choice of lifestyle.
Right.
You know, like thousands of people die every year through these sort of illnesses. You're more likely to die from a vending machine falling on you than being killed by a shark.
Right.
You're more likely to die falling over in the shower than being bitten by a shark. And apparently being left-handed is another way to die, because if you think all of like power tools like scissors, drills and everything are designed for right-handed people, apparently this is a death trap for lefties. So
oh, really?
All these sorts of things.
Who knew?
These are interesting facts. Very good.
Yeah.
I'll be double careful in the shower tomorrow morning. Well, okay, that was really cool, and I think we can all agree that the interaction, while it was good to highlight sharks, it wasn't done in necessarily the best way.
There's ways to convey your message, isn't there? You know, and it's like you say, it's how your behaviour can influence people who see you as a role model and then can copy your behaviour, and like you say, the consequences isn't going to be good for anybody involved, especially the shark.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, leaving everything else to one side, it's the interaction with the animal itself and the effect it has on that that animal in particular. Moving on from that, you look like you're about to say something else though, Samantha, before I...
No, I mean, like, my personal opinions aside about... So, I read numerous places that, you know, Ocean Ramsey is sponsored by GoPro, she's sponsored by Cressy, she does have her own, like, equipment line and things like this. And I just find it very sad that, you know, people see this as shark conservation when actually it's just her using an excuse for marketing her products. And people might call me, like, cynical, pessimistic, but unfortunately, in my opinion, that's what that was. So.
It seems to be an element of that for sure, in that when I then Googled to find out a bit more about her, the next thing is here's a range of wetsuits that she's marketing. That doesn't necessarily go in hand with the selflessness of conservation. When you think of organisations and the people who perhaps, let's say they're on a vessel for Sea Shepherd and and you know, risking everything to try and do something is a stark contrast to someone trying to sell a pair of fins. And that's not me having a, you know, being critical of Ocean Ramsey personally, because I don't know the woman, but there's certainly a business aspect to this that you wouldn't get in other non-profit organisations or in research science that you're doing when you're out in the Pacific.
I'd like to finish on a positive note about Ocean Ramsey.
Of course.
If for any reason she listens to this and feels like
this is your platform, Samantha. Go for it.
No, I mean, she obviously cares a lot about sharks, and she's obviously spent a lot of time in the water with sharks, and she can read their behaviour and things like that. And so she has One Ocean Diving, which is a company out in Hawaii that she runs. And I know someone who's been out on a trip with her, and so she educates people about shark behaviour. She takes them on trips, and she lets people be in the water and see these animals under her supervision. So some sort of, like, you know, ecotourism like that, I think that's actually a really good tool that we can use to get people to care about sharks and interact with them in a safe and responsible way. You know, I think that's something that she can definitely bring to our fight against sharks' plight. So.
It's providing education, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we'll move on from the Great White Encounter because you've mentioned earlier you've got some interesting animal facts you're going to dazzle us with and all our listeners. So, shall we move on to them?
Okay. Well, it's more like some quiz questions.
Oh no, we're going to look like the scuba idiots that we are at this moment.
Been exposed.
Well, okay. Let me think. So this all came about because you guys asked me what the plural for octopus was.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is something I read about for a quiz because it was quite hard to find the answer. A lot of places, like, so people would say octopi, octopuses, and I think in the English dictionary both are accepted. But so octopus is a Latinized Greek word and not a Latin word, and so because of that it should be octopodes.
Oh really?
Which I never have thought of.
Octopodes.
Wow.
And also doesn't sound as cool as octopi.
No, it doesn't. It sounds like a second-rate indie band. Very good.
Okay.
Well, that's cleared that one up. What else have you got?
Okay, I've got 3 small questions.
Okay.
So if we're talking about the natural world, obviously Sir David Attenborough is our national treasure, has done so much work for getting people to care about the natural environment and conservation of species. But, little known fact, what sport did he introduce when coloured television came about in the 70s? To TV. Brought it to TV and he introduced it.
I'm gonna can I have a guess?
Go on then.
I think it's snooker. I think he was a TV producer and it was snooker.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
It was indeed,
Oh, no way.
Yes. I'm not as daft as I look.
Well done, Marcus.
Thank you.
I asked this at my lab group and not a single person knew this, so well done.
That is pretty random.
Yeah. That's not what you'd expect from him, is it? From a man who... Because it wasn't long after that, I suppose it was in the 80s when I first recall him, when you see reruns of things like his interactions with the apes and the gorillas in the jungle, when he was hiding in the undergrowth to kind of, as we talked about earlier, interact with them in a non-intrusive way, you know.
Is it The Natural Planet?
Yeah.
Was it The Natural Planet in the 80s?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm very old, so my memory's not good on those sort of things. But yeah. Okay, that's good.
Okay, so which animal holds the record for the longest terrestrial migration?
Lou, you can take this one.
Crikey. Oh, don't.
Terrestrial migration.
So physically walking from one place to the other.
Yeah. We need a countdown clock or something.
Yeah.
Rachel Riley in the corner.
You wish.
Yes.
I'm going to say, and this is really random, I'm going to say a hedgehog.
It's not a hedgehog.
Really?
You'll be very... So they have been recorded to walk more than 5,000 kilometres.
5,000? That's a lot of walking for a hedgehog with their little legs.
They can walk quite a long distance, actually, hedgehogs.
Really?
They can walk up to a kilometre a night. A
Can they?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
See, we can teach you some stuff as well, Samantha.
I like this.
So what is the correct answer?
So it's a caribou.
Oh,
Caribou.
really? Oh, I love them. They're so cute.
Excellent.
I like caribou.
Have you got more facts for us?
So it's another migration question.
Okay.
But this one was, instead of distance, this is sheer number of animals moving at once.
Oh.
In one go. The largest migration. Now this is a sneaky one, which is... Yeah.
You're not going to give us any more clues than that, are you? Is it some species of geese who are migrating, as in something airborne?
It's in the ocean. It's marine.
Is it? Oh. Sardine run. Is it sardines?
It's not. It's smaller.
Oh.
Is it? It must be some type of plankton, which is moving from ocean to ocean. I don't know.
It is indeed plankton. Yeah.
Hey. Power of deduction.
Third time lucky. Very good.
Yeah. On sheer numbers of individuals moving as plankton.
Wow.
But so while I was reading about this is a really great way for me to procrastinate at the end of the year and make this quiz for everyone. I went through the Guinness Book of Records and found some absolutely hilarious animal achievements. So I thought I'd run them past you now.
Right.
So the wealthiest pet was a cat called Blackie.
Right.
Who was left £7 million in 1988.
Right.
And he was the last surviving member of 15 cats on this mansion. And Mr. Ben Rear left him £7 million, apparently.
To a cat?
To a cat.
Oh, my goodness.
That's unbelievable. I mean, what? That's a lot of tins of whiskers, really. I mean, I don't know what a cat would spend that kind of money on, you know.
No.
But, probably like
knitted mice
eating
and
fresh tuna.
Yeah. Gold collars and
Yeah. Very good. How many more have you got for us? What's next?
I'll give you one more.
One more?
Because one more. This one I'm interested. I found this one very funny. So, an individual animal most times quarantined.
Oh.
Another cat. So
really?
Smarty cat, was quarantined for the 40th time in Cyprus after her 79th flight from Cairo in 2005. She also holds the record for the cat with the most number of flights.
Wow, that's one jet-lagged cat, isn't it?
So I'm just trying to work out what a cat would be doing flying in and out of Cairo or flying at all like that. I'm presuming this cat had some owners and he wasn't just like the bassist in a band and was on tour.
Case, yeah.
See you later, guys. I'm off on my holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of those comfy neck pillows to chill out on.
Yeah. Another gin and tonic, please. He's pressing the light above him.
Racking up the air miles, yeah.
Taking some selfies out there.
Exactly, yeah. Instagram superstar.
Yeah.
Right, okay. That's really good. They're good facts. And hopefully our listeners will enjoy those as well. They'll all be telling their friends at the coffee machine the next day all these facts, as if they're highly
Not
highly
the vending
intelligent.
machine, though. Be careful of the vending machine.
Vending machines are deadly.
Yeah.
Stay away from them. Exactly right. Well, that's brilliant, Sam. Thanks for coming on. And when are you flying out of the UK again?
I'm going to Perpignan some point this month to meet up with other people from my research group and make a plan for this field season. But then I'm going out in April to start my research again and collect data. So looking forward to that. That'll be good.
And you're going to have to keep us posted on what you're up to out there. I'm presuming you have Wi-Fi out in the wilds of the Pacific. So anytime you want to come back and have a chat with us on the podcast, you're always very welcome. You're becoming our resident science expert on the podcast, and we'd love to have you back again. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. All I can say to that is with great power comes great responsibility. So
isn't that a Spider-Man line?
It is indeed. Wisdom is everywhere.
All right, Sam, it was nice to speak to you again, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you guys.
And
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that. That was a fun interview for me and Louise to record. It's a shame that Ian couldn't be there for it, but he was
stuck in Bungay.
he was otherwise.
It's the centre of the universe. What can we say?
He was otherwise engaged, but hopefully you learned some new animal facts. I didn't know that about a caribou for a start. So that was interesting stuff. And with regards to the shark encounter aspect of it, I thought it was quite a nicely balanced conversation in that there are two sides to every story, and in that particular aspect, obviously Samantha felt that from a role model point of view, it wasn't necessarily the best way to promote shark conservation in the way it was done. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the emphasis certainly with Samantha's description of Ocean Ramsay is that she is an Instagram model, and yes, she claims to be a conservationist and etc. biologist, but the bottom line is social media is just this glossy veneer of what happens, and they're very impressive photographs and videos that get posted, but the reality is there's so much research and hard work and studying. I'm sure Samantha can will agree that goes into this, and to kind of put it out there in social media makes situations such as one that Ocean Ramsay was in look very accessible and easy, and it's not always the case, and I think that influence aspect of people can copy, and
I look at she got away with that. Is that she had a near miss, got away with it, and somebody else who could see that and thought, I can do that, well then replicate it, and it doesn't potentially something doesn't
any
go
interaction
as well.
with wildlife. They're wild animals, and especially apex predators. Ocean Ramsay, obviously she understands the behaviour of sharks, she knows how to behave around sharks from what we can see, and she understands the creatures, there's no doubt in that, but it's still a wild animal, and even a domestic dog can
the dinosaur
can turn, its mood can change, something can affect it, so that any animal is unpredictable basically, and it's a difficult one really,
and look at it from a safe distance, and
exactly right.
Enjoy
I think exactly. Look, don't touch.
Distance.
Exactly like we said at the beginning of the interview.
It's like your manta ray analogy, isn't it? The strippers.
Yeah.
Episode was it 8? Who did?
I think it was around that when we did the Narked Off episode. We had a little chat about that, and my briefing always used to be I had a diagram of where you should position yourself, as in not directly in front of it, not within a certain proximity, this kind of thing. And my briefing, if I had a bunch of guys on the boat and I was going to take them in an area where there was a cleaning station and potential manta encounter, was imagine they're strippers and you're in a strip club.
Really?
You look but you don't touch.
Of course.
You keep a respectful distance.
Where do you put the dollar notes?
And they're beautiful but just don't touch them. That's the rules, and if you do touch them, it's the end of your dive.
So do you take dollar notes down with you?
You can do. I'm not quite sure what Amanda Ray would squander.
It's just a whole different dive.
A $20 bill on, but maybe some of our listeners will write in and with some suggestions.
It's a whole complete different dive.
Exactly. I've got some strange images in my head. On that note, shall we wrap it up, guys, for this week?
Yeah.
I think that's enough of our jibber jabbering. So thanks to anyone who's downloaded this and made it to the end. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you'll be back. When we leave you in a second, you'll hear how you can get in contact with us down the various social media channels, email, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, all these kind of channels. And we hope to see you next time on Scuba Confidential. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Tune in.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Scuba Confidential. We really appreciate you tuning in today. We'd like to clarify that we're in no way affiliated with any agency or organisation. All opinions expressed during this podcast are our own. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at ScubaConfident1, Instagram and Facebook at Scuba Confidential, and if you'd like to support us via Patreon, go to patreon.com/Scuba Confidential. Any contribution is really appreciated. Additionally, if you have any suggestions for topics or discussions, just let us know at scubaconfidential@gmail.com. Many thanks to Plunkett Music for the groovy tunes, and we'll catch up next time. Until then, keep diving.